The Go Nows is back. The trade rumors are really starting to heat up. Some brand new trade candidates. We'll break those guys down in this video along with landing spots, predictions, scenarios. We'll touch on some recent guys that were cut. Jon Allen, Evan Engram. We'll touch on the Cooper Kupp situation. Free agency prediction video starting to roll out. Join us for all that. Let's get to it. DK Metcalf, maybe the biggest trade candidate out there right now. The Seahawks want a first-round pick and a third-round pick. That seems a little rich. Probably not going to get that. But one, the Seahawks don't absolutely have to trade him, especially ASAP. They don't have to. And that's the starting price, right? You start something high, you negotiate. It makes sense. So they'll come down on that a little bit. But a lot of people are ripping the idea of trading a first-round pick for DK. I mean, I know he has to get a pricey extension, but this is a very talented receiver. I mean, he's the big body contested catch guys don't really work in today's game anymore, but the few that do, Mike Evans, DK Metcalf, they are dominant. So I think it's a rare type of receiver. I think people are knocking him and his value a little bit too much here. I think a late first round pick is reasonable, but I think most likely it's a second round pick, but with something else. I think a team potentially can get a steal for him if the Seahawks decide they want to move on from him. It kind of makes sense, though. He was complaining a lot last year. He kind of wants out. They bring in Clint Kubiak for offense coordinator. His offense is a lot of running the football, open up the pass, specifically play action pass. It's, try to get a lead and drain the clock. The clock is the main factor for that type of offense. So Metcalf might be unhappy with that once we get into the season. So I think the Seahawks kind of know that, so it does kind of make sense. $18 million cap hit this year, that's very, very reasonable. Maybe he wants a raise. We know he wants an extension. The teams that we know are interested, I mean, there's quite a few. The Chargers have been thrown out there. The Patriots have thrown out there. Those two teams right away, we heard they will be interested. The Raiders we heard as well. Made sense about Pete because Pete Carroll's there. Ian Rappaport said the Texans, that was before they traded for Christian Kirk. I wouldn't say remove them just yet because a different type of receiver, and they may need more. Him and Nico Collins, another one of those top-tier contested catch receivers. That'd be quite the pairing. I recently heard today the Panthers are a team that is interesting. No surprise, Dave Canales, background with the Seattle Seahawks. He was with the Bucs. They had a Mike Evans. It's similar type of receiver, if you could argue. So that makes sense. The Packers, there were rumors about it. Nothing confirmed, nothing legit, but I totally could see it. So the situation here, though, with teams like, well, are the Texans out of it? That's the question. Steelers haven't really heard anything. Do they view him more as a George Pickens type receiver? They already have one of those guys with the character and the skill set, the type of receiver. So do they rather just extend Pickens? But situation for teams like the Raiders and maybe the Panthers and maybe the Patriots, either way, the Patriots would be interested. But he gets unhappy very easily. Even Seattle had some good situations at times. So does a team like the Raiders bring him in? They could try. They have Pete Carroll. I know Metcalf probably likes Pete Carroll, but does he get unhappy with the situation? Is it worth it for the Raiders if they bring in a big-time quarterback? We'll touch on that in this video. Then is it a little more appealing? The trade scenario that makes the most sense for me at this time for DK Metcalf, the Chargers, perfect fit. I think he'd be very happy there with Justin Herbert, a contending team. It would make them that much more of a contender. DK with Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey in the slot. I mean, beautiful. I think a second and a fourth makes some sense. Could the Chargers trade that late first round pick and maybe get something a later pick back in return? I can't rule that out. I think this would be a steal, honestly, for the Chargers. I think DK Metcalf is a rare hell of a receiver. So a second and fourth, pretty solid deal for both sides. The Seahawks will ask for more. Maybe they hold out unless they get more. They have every right to. But again, I do like the other landing spots. There's some connections in the other landing spots like we talked about. This one happens to be my favorite right now. Trey Hendrickson, star pass rusher, sack leader, now on the trading block. Him and the Bengals could not reach an agreement on a long-term deal. He's asking for a lot. The Bengals might be lowballing him, but he wants elite pass rusher money at the age of 30. So the Bengals are actually finally agreeing to trade him. A lot of landing spots. Cap hit would be $16 million, but it really sounds like he wants a raise, not just the extension, but the raise from that. He is 30, not that big of a deal, but do you sign him to a 4-year deal or even more than that? Probably not. How long will he be this good for? That's some of the questions there. I think his value, it's kind of been reported, as estimates around a second round pick or a third I would say if it's a third plus because he is the sack leader. But he's 30. You have to give him a new deal. You probably have to give him a raise because 16 is just a severe underpay. Teams that we can confirm for sure are interested. It's been confirmed. The Commanders, the Falcons, and the Colts. So 3 teams right now. I have an idea about the other teams, but the Commanders make a lot of sense for several reasons. They're a contender right now. I think a contender should trade for Hendrickson, again, because he's 30. How long, what's the window? How long is he going to be really solid for? You have to pay him a lot, all those. But the Commanders, maybe a big-time pass rusher away from being that much more of a contender. They can afford him now. They can afford him in the future. They're willing to obviously trade a pick to go get him. They're confirmed interest. Falcons are in on Trey Hendrickson. You probably can argue that one. They're a little young. They're a non-playoff team. But really, if you look at this roster, I mean, stars, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Mooney's not a star, but a really good football player. Pitts, if he figures it out. But defensive stars, A.J. Terrell, Jesse Bates. They bring in Jeff Ulbrich, who's a very good defensive coordinator. Currently, they have Grady Jarrett, who's a good defensive tackle. They could move on from him. You could argue this team is a pass rusher away, and then it's all on the young Michael Penix on whether they're going to be a contender or not. So it can make some sense. They are limited on draft picks. You could argue build around Michael Penix with draft picks, but because you could argue with the roster that they're maybe a pass rusher away, okay. Feels like a Lions-type defensive end. I think I've been saying that for over a year. When Hendrickson a year ago asked to be traded, the Bengals did not really want to do that. Packers switched to a 4-3 last year with the different scheme change, new defensive coordinator, and he would fit. They're looking for a pass rusher that just stays consistent, gets after the quarterback. So the Lions and Packers, same boat. They have cap space this year. They don't have a ton in the future, but they can make it work, of course. Love those fits. The Colts are confirmed interested. To me, they're almost in the same boat as the Bears. In the Bears, there's a lot more optimism with their upside, though, probably because Caleb Williams and some of the other pieces they have, so they are different in that category. But the Colts confirmed interest makes sense. Lou Anarumo, both these teams are on the same page in that category too. He's played for 2 defense coordinators, Hendrickson. Lou Anarumo is now the Colts defense coordinator. Dennis Allen, with the Saints, but now the defense coordinator of the Bears. So that great fits. We know they fit. We know those coaches love Trey Hendrickson. Both those teams could use a pass rusher that can get after the quarterback a little more consistently. Yeah, I mean, the Colts are a little bit in no man's land right now. If they get Hendrickson and they, at age 30, and they spend a lot on him and they sign him to a 3-year deal, I would imagine that is the smart thing to do. What is he going to do for you in the next 3 years? Like, he's going to be solid, but where are you going to get? That's kind of the same thing with the Bears. They've added, veteran guys. They keep trading for guys like Joe Thuney. Great trade because he's a great offensive lineman, and it was only a future 4th. But at some point, like if they add Hendrickson now, it's almost like they're in complete win, like Super Bowl or bust, win now, like within Hendrickson and Thuney's contract. Because once those guys are declined or once their contract's up, it resets, and then you start back at square one where you are right now. So I don't think those teams are a Hendrickson away. Therefore, stay younger, continue to build. Look how the Chiefs and the Eagles did it. They build through the draft. I mean, the Chiefs actually move on from the star players and just recoup them in the draft. They keep their absolute superstars. Eagles built through the draft, and when they were good and ready to contend, they trade for A.J. Brown. But a guy like A.J. Brown is a long-term guy as well. They end up winning the Super Bowl. So that's why for these teams, does it make sense to make this move? It would almost kind of give them a window, like where they got to win now, like while they have like Hendrickson and Thuney playing very good, at a high level. So I love the fit, but I don't think it makes a ton of sense for those teams for that reason. I think it would hurt their future a little bit when those are supposed to be, especially the Bears, future teams. The Colts, again, where are they at? So even, I don't even know if they know where they're at. Ballard doesn't like to spend big mostly, but then he said they're going to spend, be more active this year, but they want to, he even said himself, they're a little bit ways away and they want younger, good talent, so I don't know. It's a little contradicting. So again, great fits. Do they actually make sense there? We'll see. I love the Bills fit as well. Love it. But a couple factors here. The Bills are tight on cap space. They're dishing out a bunch of extensions. They're trying to dish out more. They can clear space, for the future pretty easily. Von Miller cut. But if they but they need to clear space now. They can do that with restructures and extensions, but that piles on money on those future years, which you would need for a Hendrickson deal, trade and then extensions. So, and then would the Bengals, if the Bengals have offers from other teams, would they trade him to a team they might have to face in an AFC playoff, a championship game maybe? Maybe not. Bucks could argue that there's definitely better scheme fits, but the Bucks are looking for a pass rusher. They might be a pass rusher away from being that much more of a contender. Little thin on cap. They can clear some space. Chargers I could see as well, depending on if they get Khalil Mack back. But again, my favorite landing spots to the top, but it doesn't mean he can't go anywhere else. I could totally see the Colts we know are interested. The Bears are very trade happy, a little bit too much looking at the last 2 years if you ask me. But I do love the Tooney trade. That's like why not? Worth it. How long is he going to be around for? But why not there? Very good player. So we'll see what happens here. I would put the Commanders as the front runner. And that brings me to the scenario. I could be a second round pick, but the Commanders actually have a very early third round pick, and that was acquired via trade. So they actually have one spot better in the third round than a team like the Colts, who are also interested. The Falcons are very, very thin on draft picks. Commanders are starting to get thin because they've traded picks away as well, but they have enough. So I'd say a third round pick. It's an earlier one because he's 30 and he needs an extension, even though talent-wise he's way more value than that. But we got to throw in another pick as well. How about a 2026 fifth round pick? But it could be a lone second round pick. Could see that. Could it be a third and then a next year fourth? Possible as well. Maybe a team would be more willing to just trade a second than a third and fourth. We'll see. But this is the scenario for Trey Hendrickson that made the most sense. The Commanders check a lot of boxes with contender. Could afford him now. Could afford him in the future. Tons of cap space. A perfect fit. What they need to take a next step as already a contender. So makes a ton of sense. Before we get to more of those big name trade candidates, Michael Mayer, a little bit of a smaller one, but a guy with upside. He was a star tight end at Notre Dame. Had some flashes. But you're still kind of banking on upside here. But a tight end that can play fairly well for you right away. Super affordable. 2 years left. Both cheap years. $1.59 million cap hit this year. Very affordable. Anywhere for a fourth round pick to a sixth round pick. Fourth seems a little rich for a guy. There's some question marks on. Sat out of games due to personal reasons last year. But maybe that's just because Brock Bowers took over. Six being the cheapest. I would say that the Raiders don't have to trade him. They don't need to free $1.59 million, right? So fifth round pick could make some sense. Maybe they hang on him for that price. Definitely possible. But yeah, they bring in Brock Bowers, and he's just obviously better, so they could, look to move on from Mayer. Maybe he wants out because of that as well, because he can be a very solid tight end. Two favorite landing spots, teams that could use him, but great fits and great connections there. The Patriots, they have Josh McDaniels as their offense coordinator. He's back. He was the Raiders head coach. He drafted Michael Mayer, so he saw something in him. They do have Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, similar style tight ends. They could be on their way out pretty soon. Hunter Henry's still going strong, a couple years on his contract. So could that stop it from happening? In the Browns, Tommy Rees, their new offense coordinator, he was their tight end coach last year. So there's a tight end connection, but goes back even more than that. He played for Notre Dame, but he coached at Notre Dame. In between Notre Dame and the Browns, he coached for Alabama for 1 year. But very familiar with Michael Mayer. He's got to be pounding the table for him. And I know they have David Njoku. Different style tight ends. Those two together should be able to work. And the Browns like using multiple tight ends. Jordan Atkins, got a lot of snaps last year along with Njoku. Njoku has some minor injuries pop up here and there, but this, we got some free agents at the position as well. Makes a lot of sense there. Other teams that need a tight end, I could see I listed off. I mean, the Chargers and Broncos could love them. Would the Raiders trade to those teams? I don't see why not, but maybe not because they're a rival. The rival trades are teams are a little more willing in that category lately, but not always. I see a lot of people mentioning the Bengals. I mean, I can't say 0% chance, but I keep hearing they're working on a deal to bring Gesicki back. I keep hearing that. So do they want to trade picks? They probably want their picks because they're going to go on a spending spree on their own guys and maybe other guys. So keep the picks because they're cheap, and then you can develop those guys. So that makes a little more sense to me. My favorite scenario is the Browns. Tommy Rees there. I love the pairing with David Njoku. We'll see if it actually happens. The Browns, I haven't heard anybody mention the Browns. It's kind of just a me thing. The Browns aren't mentioned with anybody tight end related. They are tight on cap. They've cleared some. He's super cheap. So a team that doesn't want to spend a ton of money, go over the cheap guys. Here, it's a great opportunity here. So I think a 5th round pick to the Raiders, again, could be anywhere from a 4th to a 6th. 4th seems a little rich right now, given is a little bit of a question mark, but I'm optimistic about Mayer's future. So it seems like a really good fit. Love that landing spot. Brandon Aiyuk. Before the season, we heard this talk, and here we go again. And right now, it kind of feels like, are these just rumors? Is it legit? It's coming out more and more. The Niners are very much open to this and kind of resetting at the receiver position, as they already have Ricky Pearsall. Looks pretty promising. Definitely possible. The way they structured the contract, it looks like they maybe knew they can move him, even though there would be a bit of dead money at first. They knew they maybe would move him in the future. And it sounds like half the organization actually wanted to trade him back when the last trade talks were taking place, and then guys like Kyle Shanahan didn't, but could be open till now. He would come with a $24.8 million cap charge from a new team. That's pretty reasonable, but it is a little tricky. He's very tricky to figure out the value for because he is coming off multiple tears in his knee and probably won't be ready right away. How will he be after the injury? I know he's young, he's talented, so it's tough. I mean, the Niners had trades on the board before they gave him the extension. One from the Browns that included a 2nd and a 4th round pick, but Aiyuk said, I don't want to play for the Browns. And then the Steelers had him locked in. We don't know exactly what those offers were, but they were pretty somewhere around that range, maybe even more than a 2nd and a 4th. And the Steelers, they had him as long, if he wasn't going to sign an extension, then he was theirs. So you would think the Niners would have to be salty about not trading them for that then. So now they got to be going, God, we want that same thing. So maybe a 2nd round value, but again, multiple knee tears. He's not going to start the year healthy. What do you give up? Would the Niners give him up for a 3rd or less? It's a little tricky here. And the $24.8 million cap hit, that seems like pretty solid for his talent. But again, not going to play every game. Maybe. So it's a little tricky. The Patriots keep hearing rumors they're desperate, as they should be, for a proven receiver. They're done messing around with some of these maybe are they good. Maybe they can be good guys. They know Drake May can play, but he needs a big time receiver. Needs some offensive linemen as well. It's a brutal situation there, but they have the money to do so. Steelers I have to list because they were very close, on the brink of making a deal for a lot of guys, it feels like. Christian Kirk maybe multiple times, but Brandon Aiyuk. So I have to list them, but I've also heard from some people that they're kind of past that point, with Brandon Aiyuk. So maybe not Steelers. Chargers, I think option A is DK Metcalf. Great fit, healthy. They kind of get to choose the contract then. I almost think the contract thing's being blown up a little too much with these guys. I understand if a team has to give a guy a pricey contract, maybe that slightly drops the value. But lately, out of nowhere, people are talking like that tanks the value. Being able to structure your own contract, like speaking as a team for a guy like DK Metcalf, I think people are overreacting from something like that. But from that being like a big negative to me, but. Aiyuk contract already done, pretty affordable this year, like I said. Packers have been in on some receivers. The Broncos I could see as well. The Panthers looking for a receiver. I know the weird thing with Aiyuk, it almost feels like he's been unhappy, is unhappy. He's a little turning into a diva, not quite on that top tier OBJ, Stephon Diggs diva meter, but tier I should say, but. It seems odd, and that's with a great organization like the San Francisco 49ers. So, to me, if I'm a team that has questions with my offense or my quarterback, and he's injured, I would pump the brakes, not do it. So, Panthers, maybe Raiders, maybe I've heard he's fond of that area. Maybe he's from there. Jacksonville has an opening now that Christian Kirk is gone, so that could be interesting. Are they trying to invest this much into another receiver? Maybe not. They could draft one. Texans, they did add Christian Kirk, but they've been in on DK Metcalf. Maybe they're in on Aiyuk, different receiver, than Kirk, but I'd say probably not. Washington was in on him back when the Steelers and the Browns were in on him. They did add Debo already. So unlikely, but I guess we can't, firmly, rule them out. But things could start to get interesting with Aiyuk, who we thought at first it was like, this is kind of just rumors, but now it's like, whoa, is this going to happen? Now, we could easily plug the Patriots in, or even Michael Mayer we just talked about, but I was going to say DK Metcalf scenario. They're one of the top teams to watch. Went with the Chargers on that one. We'll go with the Patriots on the Brandon Aiyuk situation. They also sound like they're interested a year ago on him or Deebo Samuel or both. So they could be interested. They're desperate to add a receiver. Value is tricky, like I said, because the 49ers got some offers way better than this less than a year ago. Contract's already done. He's super talented. He's still young. Maybe he has some upside, but so you could say second-round pick, maybe second-round pick more than that, but multiple tears in his knee, might not be ready to start the year. The Patriots specifically have a early second-round pick. I think that's a little rich. I almost had the scenario of that second-round pick, but the Patriots getting a pick back. This made a little bit more sense, but the Niners might just say, no, we'd rather keep him, which makes sense. They'd rather keep him for a third and a fifth, but it is 2 picks. They have plenty of picks already, so the Niners might rather keep him for this, but even though that's not a bad offer given he has an injury. But if the Patriots offer that early second, I think the Niners would be all over that, but that might feel a little rich. Patriots have some holes still. They could use that early second round pick, and would be a lot cheaper with upside, healthier, right? So that has some, it's a sweet spot of this draft too. Second, third round. That early second round pick has some value. So an interesting situation here at Brandon Aiyuk. Here is an interesting one. Geno Smith. Could he be dealt? I talked about this maybe over a month, more than a month ago, specifically with the Raiders before they got Pete Carroll. I thought it was interesting. But then the talk was, including from myself, that they're going to get Sam Darnold, and they very well could be. So I'm not really necessarily saying this is my prediction right here. They're going to make this trade. It is a scenario that actually is possible, and I'll tell you why. Well, this morning, Diana Rossini said she heard, yeah, the Raiders are after veteran quarterbacks free agency. We knew that, but they're also interested in veteran quarterback via trade. They have discussed adding a starting quarterback possibly that would be via trade. So I'm like, I thought about this a while ago. It has to be Geno, right? I'm going down a list of quarterbacks. I'm like, it really only, they have the Pete Carroll connection. It really only could be Geno. If you're counting Kirk Cousins as a current starting quarterback, maybe him. Do they want him? Sounds like the Falcons are hanging on to him a bit. They wouldn't trade for Carr. Will Levis popped in my head, but is that that's not a veteran starting quarterback. It's got to be Geno. So my thinking, why does this tweet exist? Why does this report exist? My thinking is all this talk about Sam Darnold maybe going back to the Vikings, or the Giants could be sneaky, the Colts could be sneaky, maybe the Titans. But a lot of talk about him possibly going back to the Vikings for cheaper than what the Raiders would offer him. Maybe the Raiders are cooking up another plan if they can't get Sam Darnold, and this one makes a lot of sense. He has 1 year left on his deal, so the bad thing is you have to give him a new deal. Maybe you don't. Just play him out the 1 year. But the good news is $25 million cap hit. That's very, very, very reasonable for a quarterback, very affordable for the Raiders. Seahawks, they dumped a lot of guys. They're looking to trade DK. It doesn't necessarily mean a ton. It doesn't mean they're rebuilding, but do they think Geno Smith is a long-term guy? Do they want to give him an extension? Maybe, maybe not, depending on the price. Do they view him as the guy? We'll see. It makes a lot of sense for several reasons. Figuring out the trade value is a little tougher because he's a starting quarterback that has experience that's pretty solid. When do you come across that? So maybe a third-round pick. The Seahawks keep him, let him walk in free agency. Maybe they'll get it'll be a longer into the future third-round compensatory pick. So I think fourth would be at worst. I mean, maybe fifth at the very, very worst. But I'm thinking fourth, maybe third. Makes a lot of sense. This is the Raiders want Sam Darnold. I'm confident about that. If they can't get him, and they feel that teams kind of get a sense of these things even before free agency, maybe they do this. So they actually could trade for Geno before free agency. I would still think it's because they wanted Sam Darnold and they couldn't do it, and they made this deal. My phone's going off like crazy. The Titans are releasing Harold Landry. Wow. So Harold Landry surprisingly got cut while I was recording this, and we expected him to get traded because he's a solid player, but was a little pricey in the cap hit range. So the Titans moved on from him, so it's a pretty good young pass rusher as long as he's healthy out there. I've been saying Patriots going to stick with that. Mike Vrabel's there. They need a pass rusher. His old position coach is there as well. Really good fit. Again, Landry has only been a 3-4 outside linebacker as an edge rusher. He can drop in coverage. I'm not going to say 0% chance, but I don't see him going to be a 4-3 end anywhere. Cardinals make some sense. They're going to try to get Josh Sweat first, but Monty Ossenfort, formerly with the Titans, is their GM. Panthers make some sense. Buccaneers, good fit there. Philadelphia, they're kind of a winner here, the Eagles, that he got released because they probably wouldn't have been able to afford his, trading him off that contract. So if he plays for a little cheaper than that, which he probably will, they would love to have him. They're probably going to lose Sweat. They can replace him with Landry. The Bengals could be switching schemes under Al Golden, so he would be a decent fit. Ravens, another one like the Eagles, big winner that he got cut because they would not have been able to afford him in a trade. Now a little bit cheaper. It's a really good fit. He could land in a team not listed. Is he a great fit with the Bills? I guess you can question some of these things. Niners, Falcons, a lot of these teams. I don't love the fit like the Packers, the Bears, maybe Lions. I like the Patriots a lot, but again, some of those contending teams seem pretty interesting. The Bucs, Eagles, Ravens, those teams are pretty interesting here. Makes sense as a fit for Harold Landry. But that wraps up this video. So I guess we didn't just talk trades. We talked with some of these guys that got cut as well. We got you guys covered with everything NFL, especially in the offseason here. Free agency prediction videos, more of them on the way. And then next week, free agency starts. Will be rapid fire. Multiple videos grading all the free agency signings based on where they landed and the contract details as well. Make sure to join us on Twitter for the latest live news. That's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Cooper Kupp is more likely to be cut than traded. We've kind of talked about that for some time. Now it's becoming a reality, even though he's not officially cut yet. That's what we are expecting. I love the Jaguars as a landing spot. I talked about that in the past too. Like if they move on from Christian Kirk, watch for them as a landing spot for Cooper Kupp. Liam Cohen, coached multiple different positions with the Rams over the years, even though he was with the Buccaneers last year. So him and Kupp very familiar with each other. You have that connection. They now need a slot receiver. And that's something to keep in mind here. Cooper Kupp, a slot receiver. That's what Christian Kirk played as well. So the landing spots are teams that could use a player at that spot. But the Falcons, there's some connections there as well with Zach Robinson, Raheem Morris, and they like using 3 receivers out there at once more than anyone with Michael Penix at quarterback. They have 2. They're going to need someone else. So I think there'd be an appealing landing spot for Kupp with the connections there, and they could use someone, and now he'd be a little cheaper if he actually is cut. Steelers keep missing on receivers. They could use a slot receiver. Heard the Cowboys will be interested if he's available. The Texans were, but they added Kirk. Slot receivers, you don't need 2 of those. Patriots, if they miss on DK, Aiyuk, or if those guys aren't available, miss on some other guys, then maybe them. Broncos could use a guy in the slot. I heard the Lions don't need a slot receiver. I heard maybe the golf connection, that could spark some things. Could see the Cardinals, could see the Chiefs. The Bucs, if they lose Chris Godwin in free agency, I would really watch the Bucs. I would put the Bucs in the top 5 if they lost Godwin in free agency, but they could get him back. Whenever I talk Cooper Kupp, a lot of people say, where's the Chargers? Where's the Bills? Teams like that. Again, Cooper Kupp, a slot receiver. Teams don't need more than 1 starting slot receiver. Khalil Shakir, the Bills just extended. Ladd McConkey, a superstar slot receiver in the making for the Chargers. Team like the Packers, they have Jaden Reed. Inconsistent, but do they bench him for Cooper Kupp? I don't think so. So, people got to keep in mind the different style of receivers here. So, I view him going to a team that needs a slot receiver. I currently like the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jon Allen was just cut a little bit before recording this, so I wanted to touch on that since yesterday's video we touched on the guys that were already cut, big-time names, so you can check that out. But I was saying the Niners for some time, and then it came out that Jon Allen was involved in those Debo talks. Didn't happen. So I'm going to keep the Niners at number 1 here. I heard last night, actually, the Steelers will be interested in Jon Allen if he's available. So I guess we can't confirm that they're currently showing interest, but it sure sounds like it. The Bengals need defensive line help badly. Appealing spot as they could be a contender. Texans seems like a really good fit in DeMeco Ryans' defense. I believe last year they had some interest in bringing Arik Armstead in. It sounded like he ended up with the Jags. It's a similar style interior defensive lineman, so I could definitely see that. The more I talk about it, the more I'm like, move the Texans up a little bit. Half the league, I mean, I heard the Vikings, I heard the Bears, I've heard the Lions, the Packers. I mean, yeah, we can list so many teams. The Patriots and Panthers are more so looking for top-end free agents. If they miss on those guys, add those teams to the mix. There's other teams. I can list off half the league here, so I didn't want to do that. That'd be weird. Those are my favorite teams. He could end up in the half the league section. We will see, but a big-time defensive lineman now available. Evan Engram was released yesterday right after I made that cut players free agency predictions video where they would land. So we'll talk about him right now. Oh, I'm torn. Chargers or Broncos? Love it with either team. I like it with the Colts as well. Chargers and Broncos, a little bit more of appealing spots. They need tight ends. I like the Chargers fit. I know Sean Payton would be interested in bringing him to the Broncos. Again, the Colts should have Colts in a prime spot early in the draft, the top half of the draft, to take one of those top tight ends. I think Warren might be gone. Loveland, that's a sweet spot for him. Chargers, I mean, Harbaugh would love to have Loveland. They got to trade up to get him, though. Chargers, Broncos teams I'm watching. Nobody talking about the Commanders. I'd watch for that. An athletic move tight end for Kingsbury's offense with Zach Ertz, probably gone. Pair him with Senat, for the Senate for the future, I should say. That's a sneaky one. Jets, Saints, other teams that get brought up. It could be a random team. He's an interesting one because he's not your traditional type tight end. So it could be a team that doesn't necessarily need a tight end that bad. They just need a bigger receiver they can move around a bit, and then they add him, to the mix and use them like that. Totally could see that. I see the Chargers and the Broncos check the box. Mainly the Chargers. They check the box for all of the above there. So that's why I do like that. But he could end up in a random, unexpected spot that's not listed here. Could see that as well.